I also serve as a board member of the Sierra Club. And so I think about climate communications often, particularly being from the United States, where it's difficult to talk about climate change. And so it's this work comes, I guess, from that frame, just to kind of go over it. So just to kind of let you know what Care About Climate is about, maybe. The other two presenters that we have here tonight, so they introduced themselves, but Sarah Voska, she directs our online youth exchange program. Essentially what it does is it connects youth with one another throughout the world and provides capacity building because they train each other on climate issues, climate solutions, and what they can do about it. And then Emmanuel Yengi, he is one of our climate ambassadors from Uganda and is serving on the COP22 delegation. And so we'll provide his perspective on climate communications as well. So just to briefly introduce you to the organization, wrong way. So Care About Climate, we have a couple of different programs and things that we do, but basically what we're trying to do is foster collaboration between communities and really get people starting to talk about climate change. Essentially, we connect people. So this really long mission statement really is more about like creating programs and things that like can help people connect on climate. And then, so just to give you an idea of one of the things that we do, a major communication campaign that we work on is called climatesign.org. It's a coalition of groups and entities that came together to create a hand sign and an image that essentially replicate like the peace sign, the human rights campaign, something that like unifies the movement. I went to the negotiations in Doha, Qatar, and I was randomly sitting by this like guy right here. His name is Natalie. And he used to be one of the chief negotiators for the United States. And one of the things he told me was to try to build political will within the United States. And for a lot of people, interacting, like trying to say they care about climate change is really difficult. They don't have time to go to the marches or can't. They don't have a lot of capacity to like get politically active. And so giving people easy way to connect with a greater community is kind of what we were about. Talking to Trade kind of made me realize that. I propose that climate change has a marketing problem and we don't market enough about like trying to solve the issue. And so pretty much our organization is founded on the idea that like we need to start communicating on climate change. Like we communicate on just selling basic things or trying to get people to engage in like fun activities and things like that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah. Emmanuel, to go over some of our engaging questions. Do you want to sit here? And Sarah, you can move in.
So today, as we talk about climate communications and strategies on how maybe we can communicate climate change to decision makers and business people. So I want to ask you a question. This on the screen. Can I read it for you? Okay. So I want to ask you people and find out from you people what kind of audience you people always have when you talk about climate change. Need some answers from you.
Usually the audience are students.
Okay. Thank you.
Like us.
What age?
High school or middle school students.
That's nice.
Citizen? Mm-hmm.
Citizens? Are they educated?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. More answers?
Usually people who like believe in climate change, like people with similar mindsets to myself.
Okay. So you've been talking about the people like climate change who know about climate change. Do they usually be people of what age do you think they are that you have been interacting with?
Yeah, like younger people, high school age.
So, so as you people have been engaging people on climate change education, so I want to find out from you people maybe what are some of the challenges that you have been facing when trying to educate people about climate change. So some of the challenges that you faced and how maybe you have faced them. Have you faced any challenge? Yes.
Yeah, some don't even believe that there is a climate change, or that we should that we need to engage against it because it would happen anyway.
Okay. So how have you been in position to make them believe in climate change? That is climate change.
Fortunately, in Germany, it's not a big topic that there are deniers of the climate change, but people I talked to, I didn't try to overrun them with facts because they always have their own facts. I just asked why this would be a lie, why people would make it up, but I didn't try to convince them as hard as I could, I guess, because it's not the main problem in Germany.
Okay.
We all come from a community where this is something that is regularly talked about, and I guess what I feel would be more of an issue or something that we face is that it's hard to actually get everyone to figure out what to do, take action. So it's translating that knowledge of, oh yeah, something's happening, but what can we do? And I think that's maybe where we struggle a little bit more on an individual and as a community level.
So how have you been positioned to maybe overcome some of the challenges?
Like I'm here.
Based on your experience?
Yeah, so we try. I think we do a better job on a community level because it's a school, so it's easy to just start initiatives and get students in the community behind it. But I guess on an individual level, it's a bit more difficult because it's hard. It's difficult to make those habit changes, but it's also expensive. So I don't know.
I think part of what these kids are doing is trying to get people related to the idea that their consumption is having an impact on forests in Indonesia. So no matter where you are in the world, how you consume is affecting forests, and the disappearance of those forests in sense forth affecting you no matter where you live on Earth. So that's the challenge that they're up against, is I guess trying to convince people that the way they consume matters and it has an impact on climate change.
Okay. Thank you. So have you been in position to maybe get some solutions to solve some of the challenges?
Yeah.
You can share with us.
We use social media, for instance, to try to get the message out as widely as possible. And we leverage the exposure that our school has in the world to get the message out. And we come to events like this to give the kids a platform to express the message and have an international audience.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Elaborating more, like we engage more through art and culture, as in like performances or music or dance. And art really makes really engage with other people, really interact with other people, and it makes when we do art, it makes them like realize or know new things, but through art, through something fun. That's how we engage to people.
Wow, that's very interesting. Okay, based on what he has said, actually, in my country, I also face the same problem, whereby people don't understand what climate change is. So, for us to make sure that they understand what climate change is, we use a informal way of communicating the message of climate change to them. We're being positioned to use pictures, poems, we sing songs about climate change, so that even people who never had the chance to go to school can understand what climate change is. So that has been a way of us trying to communicate the science of climate change to people who even never had the chance to go to school. And we've also been trying to use the local languages in our country so that the local people can get to know what climate change in their local language. So that's how we're being imposed to solve some of the challenges that we face when we're communicating climate change education. Yeah, thank you. More experiences that you would like to share? I think we are done. Okay, thank you so much.
And if you click, if anyone's following on Twitter or Facebook, you can tweet your response. Okay, yeah, you can tweet about any challenges you've had when talking about climate change at BonnLab and at Care About Climate. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on. Right now, when you think about climate change, it's not so much like a meteorological condition, it's a political subject when we talk about it with others. And so there's some polarization sometimes, and because of that, the opinions that come into it and the emotions that are brought into it, people sometimes start to self-silence. And so when they self-silence, they're not talking about these issues.
Oh, I'm letting him know he can come. Sorry.
So people self-silence so that they can avoid the conflict, and they don't have to be put in a sort of argument with others, especially people they care about. We were talking. You guys mentioned that you talk to other students, you talk to your families, people that are similar to you, and you don't really want to enter into conflict with people you have to be in class with the next day. And so we sometimes just hold those opinions inside and say, well, I'm not going to get into this argument with him about climate change because, I want to maintain our friendship. And this, in the end, can lead to progressively to what's called pluralistic ignorance, according to a Penn State University study that was done a couple years ago. And so pluralistic ignorance is when the entire society does not understand a concept or is just ignorant on a subject. And as we found in the US, that has tended to be the case. And a lot of people, as you both have, a couple people have mentioned, just don't understand that or don't believe that climate change exists or that it's human caused when it's not. In this sense, I mean, it's fact. We know climate change is real. We know that it's human caused. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has proved that. So there's no reason to have this debate, but because of the root issues that come from climate change and the things that will have to change to be able to deal with it, it's been politicized.
Can I add to that really quick? Yeah. I think another thing too is it's not necessarily we come from the US and that's talking about belief or not belief, and that's a different situation, but this also applies to solutions. And so when people start talking about solutions, I think if we're worried about conflict, we start to back off. And so thinking about how you can re-communicate solutions is also important, even if you're talking to an audience that believes in it but is not engaged in it. And so really thinking about that difference and how you can make that next step to engagement is also important to think about how you can talk about it.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So we found a study that was conducted by GlobeScan that found that overwhelmingly world business leaders see opportunity and growth that will come from acting on climate change. They think that green innovation will create new jobs, boost their economy, investing in climate change solutions will be beneficial for their portfolios, and overall, business leaders are seeing worldwide that acting on climate change is important. So what we need for climate change is just a marketing makeover. So we're going to talk about some products that we all like or that you guys like and the sort of marketing plans and strategies that they use. Can anyone come up with a product or a brand or a product that they really like and tell us a little bit about how it's branded?
Cars.
BMW? Right. What is the thing for BMW? Performance. Yes.
Very high quality.
Mm-hmm.
And magnet.
Yeah.
That's me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. BMW and Apple both have this sleek just image, the high performance. That is kind of their image. What other products? Patagonia? How do they market themselves?
Connection to nature.
Yeah.
Wild nature.
They talk about adventure and pushing you to the extremes. So, can you guys envision a way that we can talk about climate change in a way that it's pushing people to be adventurous, to go to the extremes, to test their limits, or to be optimal performing? I think an easy one for performance would be energy efficiency. So not only is energy efficiency cost saving, but you're stripping down any waste in whether it's a business and you reduce your energy efficiency or increase your energy efficiency. When you do that, you're saving money and then just streamlining your production so that you're not using as much energy, and it's beneficial for the company as a whole and increases performance.
So I actually like the Apple example, and we've used it a couple times before, but can we dive into that a little bit more? So like, what about, not specifically, like, what about Apple's marketing? Not necessarily the quality that you get out of the product, but what about the marketing that like makes it cool or hip, or like what kind of things come out at you when you see their commercials or whatever it is?
The idea of innovation, imagination,
Innovation,
creativity.
creativity. Anger. Any other things? Yeah.
Identification, that it's iPhone, everything with the I. So if you have an Apple, even though it's one of the most sold products in the whole world, you feel like you have something special.
Yeah, it definitely has that individualistic. So creative, innovation, individualism. Any other values or things that like Apple taps into?
What I personally feel, I'm a very big user, not of social media, just of any device. And it's not only about like, each component of Apple, that's a battery or camera, is not the best. But the combination of all of it makes the best result. And that's very important. Because like a teamwork, sometimes some people are very incomplete by learning, but as a team they're perfect. So that's what actually I feel Apple does.
Synergy.
The camera is not the best, the battery is not the best, design even is not the best, the features are not the best. I was using better features 3 years ago than I use now. But the thing is, it works every time I touch. And together. So I think it's all together, rhythm, like playing an orchestra or playing a solo. So it's like
Yeah, so I heard two things there: synergy and then also reliability.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want you to think about these things, because really a lot of times, like, the solutions are there, we just have to copy them. And I don't think we take advantage of that. So thinking like a marketer is kind of like the switch that we want to make here. Okay.
So I think this will play. We have a short video of a commercial that was done that tried to reframe the Get Outside campaign. Oh, wait.
Do you find yourself longing for the apocalypse? I did. I was looking for a reason to live. Hi. Are you feeling tired, irritable, stressed out? Well, you might consider nature.
From the people that value getting outside comes prescription strength nature, non-harmful medication shown to relieve the crippling symptoms of modern life.
Nature's recommended for humans of all ages, and it's great for pets too.
Nature can reduce cynicism, meaninglessness, anal retentiveness, and murderous rage. In clinical studies, nature is proven to decrease work-induced catatonia.
Caution. Nature may cause you to slow down, quit your job, or seriously consider what the you're doing with your life.
If you are overly cynical, jaded, or emotionally numb, you may need to increase your dose of nature. Do you have trouble being even mildly uncomfortable? Nature may not be right for you. Side effects may include spontaneous euphoria, taking yourself less seriously, and being in a good mood for no apparent reason.
So ask your doctor if nature is right for you.
All right. So what was different there about how they marketed themselves?
Humor. There's a lot of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Very effective, as well as playing on the whole trope of medications.
Yeah. Anything else?
They frame to get out and go into nature as a medication for your anxiety and disinterest in other stuff and stuff. So that would win.
Right. It had a benefit and it solved a problem.
Yeah, you should take care of it because otherwise you don't have this medication.
Right. Anyone else notice anything from that commercial? Okay.
I just one thing that I really appreciate about this and like the medication commercials do really well is it's never about the medication or even like the word nature. It's about the experience that it gives you. Working on climate change should never be about like necessarily the like thing you're actually doing, but more about the experience and the community and like the excitement that you build around it.
Yeah. Like doing paperwork for an environmental organization isn't like exciting, like join us. We can do paperwork together. But the experience of what you get out of it, the community that has come together and bond for these 2 weeks is especially exciting. And so that's the sort of experience that sells. So when we're trying to convince people to engage with us, the first thing you have to do is kind of build a bridge towards them and reach out a hand so that you can connect with them. Part of that is just being a friend to them. So even if it's like a local politician or even a high-level negotiator, trying to be friendly to them and showing that you care for them is going to be the first step to getting them to care about what you have to say. One way I like to start talking with people is asking them about themselves, asking if they need anything. I have Italian background, so my family just like feeds everyone. And so my great-grandma, she lived to 102 years old, and every time the plumber came over, she'd have like a fresh baked loaf of bread for him. Just because that was how she showed that she cared about people. And so when you reach out to people with something that they'll enjoy and just sit down and talk with them about their interests, about their work, you're going to get a lot better response from them. I went to a conference a couple weeks ago, and when I was following up with some of the people from the conference, I asked for just a 30-minute interview, or like an informational interview with them to just hear about the work that they do. They ended up giving me 2.5 hours of their time, a ton of educational resources and curriculums that we can use for Care About Climate, and then I think she spoke for about an hour just about herself, and then she turned the conversation back and was like, wait, what do you do? Now that I've gotten a chance to talk about myself, I feel like I can relate with you and tell me about your work. And at that point, because I kind of laid out the steps for a bridge for her, and she had come back with a couple steps on her side almost with what she's interested in and what her work is, I was able to talk about what Care About Climate does in terms of her work. Not necessarily but and
I
so
think it's a koi presentation.
yeah, okay. I like mixing two presentations into this one.
You close the other presentation.
I know.
Okay,
I didn't
cool.
want that.
Just
Yeah.
making sure.
So this is
Okay.
the presentation I want to be on.
Okay, cool.
So I was able to get this person to learn about Care About Climate in a way that was interesting for her work. So now that I knew what she did, I could say, oh, you work with, she worked at the zoo. And so I was talking about the educational programs they had there. And she's telling me about a zoo teens program. And I said, oh, well, we work with school groups and we offer this online youth exchange, which is geared towards teens and college students, young adults. And so it was perfect for her. Whereas if I had kind of started with, here's all our programs, which one do you want? And which one works for you? It wouldn't have the same impact as if she's already thinking about what she does and how she can engage. And so that worked really well. Recognizing their importance and complimenting them goes into that friendship and listening to them. So recognizing their importance is just in there listening sometimes. Other times it's treating them with the respect that they deserve or that they should receive just for being a human being even. And so reminding yourself that they are taking time out of their day to speak with you and to engage with you. And so thanking them for that time. Expecting great things is instead of going into a conversation with a negative outlook, like, this person definitely does not believe in climate change. And going in with an accusatory perspective, if you go in with a positive expectation of the person, you often be surprised. In the Boy Scouts, they have a motto that's plan for the worst, expect the best. And so when you expect a good outcome, you're going to be more likely to kind of have that self-fulfilling prophecy where you reach out to someone and expect something great from them. Like you're asking them for a favor, but you're kind of have this expectation that they'll fulfill it. The way you word your conversations by that expectation that they'll meet your goals is going to be different. And so when you're communicating with a decision maker in particular, like with a politician, if you can start by saying, giving them a reputation to live up to and expecting great things, you can kind of pull into one and say, wow, senator, diplomat, you've worked in the past for all these great environmental causes. You've helped build a city park and protect this wild area. I know that you're going to be a leader in the environmental movement and stand for climate justice. And then you can give your ask of whatever you're trying to engage them with, whether it's a commitment to a policy or support of a movement that you're trying to build. If you go in there with this recognition of what they've done in the past and expectation that they will continue along that path and help you and you can work together, you can see a lot more success. And then finally is making sure that they don't lose face. So no one likes when they're in an argument and someone just calls them out on something that you didn't necessarily have to call them out, but you're just kind of nitpicking, or you're calling them out on a fact that was false. People get embarrassed, especially if they're in public or in front of others. And so people want to look good in front of their friends, in front of their community, and decision makers have to look good in front of their business or whatever organization that they are in charge of. So making sure that they don't lose face means trying to just engage with them in a way that they have a positive outcome from it, that they look good and you're showing that they're important and not diminishing them and just beating them to the ground. Like when you attack a politician in public, they don't feel really good about that. And in the end, you are the one who looks like the crazy environmental tree hugger person who's just insane and doesn't understand how the economy works, perhaps. If you help them and work together with them and expect great things from them and try and figure out what you agree on, you're going to have a better relationship with that person. Do you want to talk about framing? do you think? Okay. So framing is this idea that when we're engaged, that everyone has different values. And so, especially in like an international community like we have right here in BonnLab, and just in the cup space as well, there's all these different values that people bring from their own cultures, from their homes, from their families, and they're all blended together in one. But a group of anthropologists did a study of 60 different cultures and found that in the small picture that you can't really see, all these values are consistent and present in every single culture that they tested. And so those values are self-direction, which is like creativity, independence, being unique. Universalism, which is for peace, beauty, caring for the environment. Benevolence, which is being good and kind to others, love and forgiveness. Tradition, which is devotion to conformity. Oh, not conformity. To be moderate and accepting of this certain traditions. Conformity is discipline, politeness, and kind of honoring the elders or honoring people in power. Security is pretty self-explanatory, just a sense of belonging and kind of your own sort of place and personal bubble. Power is wealth, social power, connections, public image, and authority. Achievement is a sense of successfulness that comes from intelligence or capability or influence. Hedonism means is like egocentrism, and so that's self-indulgence and pleasure. And then finally, stimulation is adventure and being daring and excitement. So all these values, to a certain extent, are held in communities around the world. And some communities or some cultures hold certain of these frames to a higher regard. And so in Germany, perhaps conformity might be something, because people like wait at the stoplight or at the the pedestrian crosswalk until the light turns green, which I'm not used to. So that is like a form of conformity that is demonstrated here in Germany. And so we can use all these frames to try and connect with others by finding which frame of interest that person holds or their community holds, or whatever your audience is. Figuring out which frame you can use best will be helpful to convince them of anything. So if you want to engage someone and communicate an issue, you'll have to go into their mindset and find out what influences them. So the way this map is set up, and it's copied here with just the main header words into this wheel. It's kind of like a color wheel. You said you were an artist. Do you know how a color wheel works? Oh, you like art though.
I like
Okay. Does anyone know how a color wheel works? So the colors right next to each other are most similar. That's not necessarily the case on the way I like the colors on here, but mostly. Yeah, I think so. So the colors next to each other are most similar, and the ones opposite each other are the furthest apart. They're like contradicting colors or contrasting colors. And so when you want to try and relate to someone who holds achievement as the highest value in their culture, you'll want to talk to them through the terms of power or hedonism, because those are most similar to achievement. And same thing, if someone is a universalist, then talking about self-direction or benevolence are really useful skills. So a lot of us here are the universalists. We love the environment. We're like little hippie, right? And with that comes a sense of creativity or want to be unique oftentimes, or a sense that we have to have this, there's a spiritual aspect to caring for the environment, and that falls under benevolence. And so you can see how these relate a little bit. So we're going to do a quick framing activity where we try and think of a way that you can frame an environmental issue let's say closing a coal mine using one of these frames. Can anyone come up with something for benevolence? So benevolence, do you want to read the words there?
We have mature love, true friendship, meaning in life, responsible, loyal, honest, helpful, forgiving, and a spiritual life.
How can we connect closing a coal mine to those values? You haven't?
I think it's if it would be so easy, it would be really cool. No.
Remember, if it's benevolence, you can also use universalism or conformity.
Mm-hmm.
So conformity, to remind you, is politeness, honoring of elders, obedient, and self-discipline. And then universalism is social justice, peace, beauty, wisdom, and unity with nature.
I need help. You can. How would you start?
So within benevolence,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that for us to be responsible, which is one of the words, for the environment where we live, we need to take care of the air, the water, and the soil. And so if we open a coal mine, then that will contaminate all. Those bubbles if we contaminate the air, water, and soil, then we're not being responsible stewards of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a value for beauty, the natural beauty of the environment, of the forests, and all the living creatures that live in it, they have an equal right to living in that space. And they, as a whole, come together and make a beautiful space that we want to preserve that. Emmanuel, do you want to try another one?
Okay. I love to talk about self-direction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for instance, maybe if you also want to close up a mind and you want to talk to the people about closing it. So you have to be creative. You can use creativity to talk to the people. You tell them about how it's going to affect the people, how the mind is already affecting people, affecting your spiritual life. Maybe you have an attachment to that mind, to that place where the mind is going to be taking place. So you tell them how it's going to affect your culture, your heritage. Then they'll get to understand you because that's like your direction, your self-direction. You love that place, and that's what brings you people. That's what unites you people. So you can use that way to talk to the people or convince them not to set up a mind or to close up a mind within that place that you love so much.
Do you think you understand this concept? Oh.
One thing that I want to point out that they're doing too is they're framing it as like a better future and positive. So there's nothing about like you're a terrible person if you like this coal mine. It's all about if we don't have this, think about the great water and air quality that we have and how you can be responsible. Or if we don't have this, think about the land that you can protect so that you can still practice your religious or like cultural beliefs. And it's all about the opportunity that you can have if you take on this action.
Yeah. There's a campaign by a Brazilian group called Sexify the Climate. And everyone perked up.
They will be here next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome. Did I see a couple heads perk up though? Do you guys wake up? Yeah. So just the word sexify or sexy gets people interested. And so they're trying to make climate change communication more sexy, more engaging, more exciting, something that will get you to perk up. Just like you all just did, which was really fun to watch, actually. And it happens every time, which is the most beautiful thing about their campaign. And so we're trying to get people to talk about climate change in a way that gets people engaged. So while like sexy is maybe something that's universal, fairly universally engaging or exciting, if we use the same thing with these things, with these frames, if you start talking to someone who's like, I don't know, a cop or a security guard, and you talk about in terms of security, like, well, the national security of your country could be put at risk by climate change. We want to protect that national security by becoming energy independent and reducing our reliance on foreign fossil fuels, because that will make our country safe. They're going to start perking up at these words like security, or national security, homeland security, safety. Those are words that are going to engage that person. So if we start thinking about the words that, like for me, like biodiversity maybe gets me all like excited. Do someone say biodiversity? But that's not the case with everyone. And so if we keep framing things around biodiversity and things that are very specific to the environmental campaign, we're going to rally more environmentalists that are already engaged, but we're not going to reach the outside communities. And so if we find these ways that we can engage people who are outside and don't use the same terms necessarily that we use, and frame it in their interests in terms of what they've told us, in terms of what we know about them, there's going to be a lot more dialogue because people are going to start interacting with what they know. Oh,
Yeah, I wanted to talk more about the achievement.
sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I'll go back. Yeah.
Okay, for instance, if maybe you're talking to a businessman about climate change, you have to give them a perspective whereby how they are going to benefit from climate change if they act. So you tell them if they practice cleaner production, maybe they're going to produce more goods and they're going to have more customers buying their goods. So that will encourage them to act on climate change. But if you just tell them maybe we're going to cut down the forest and animals are going to die, so it doesn't make sense to them. So you have to make it in monetary terms. You have to talk to them in economic ways so that they'll get to act and make sure climate change is combated. Yeah, that's how you can frame climate education into someone's interest. Yeah, that's just an example.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You want to talk about this one too? Okay. So who's someone that you guys would like to engage with? You talked about, who was it that mentioned that there was someone that they kind of thought about engaging, but kind of just stuck within the environmental community. Is there anyone that you thought, I could really have a good, like I know that person has different beliefs than I do and would like to engage with them, but it kind of sounds hard. I think that was you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's that?
Oh, wait, no. Down here. Sorry, you'll be next.
The two persons I talked with, I don't have a deep connection to them. But if I would continue to talk with them, I would try to go around the topic at first, and that's what I'm doing anyways with them now. I don't talk about climate change. And find a common ground or find out why they don't believe it, and then I can start from there.
Yeah, finding those points of commonality will help you be able to frame it.
Because this one guy, he's actually very critical of almost everything, so it's just every common belief, I think he doesn't believe. So maybe I should ask why.
Yes. And sometimes you'll find that as you start to get to know someone and talk with them more, you're able to, instead of saying like, this person is a horrible person who doesn't believe in climate change and will never change, you can start to see, well, the way they've grown up or been raised, the environment they've had around them has not been conducive to them wanting to engage in climate action. And so you kind of see that it's not the person themselves who's at fault, but yeah.
This guy, I asked him why he doesn't believe it, because actually in Germany, the last 10 years, the winter changed. We have a lot less snow, for example. You really feel it, and then there is this argument that it would happen anyways, and then but it's very quick. And even if he would believe that people are not responsible for the change, we could still try to make it less have an impact on human life, because it will. So I don't have to make him believe that it's made by people, by humans. But I could try to tell him that it doesn't matter. You can still be more environmentally friendly or whatever.
That's awesome. All right, I wish you all the luck. Best of luck in the rest of your conversation with him. What were you going to say?
One of the projects of these guys is trying to. So in our high school, it was fairly easy to a group of students that would be able to do something about climate change, and what they want to try to achieve now is to get other high schools to do the same, or start to get first of all to convince other schools that that's important, right? That is a thing that people should get together around and try to teach their students, and engaging them into creating a club around this. And I guess we struggle in getting schools to give that space for students to be like, oh yeah, okay, let's gather around this issue and try to find solutions.
So I would challenge you to think about, what are some of the goals of the school? What are their values?
Of other schools, I don't know about other students in the future, but give them the best tools to succeed in the future classes.
And do you think climate change can play into that?
I think another key thing that, like when you talk to principals or leaders in the school, especially middle schools and high schools, their ears perk up when you talk about service hours, because they're always struggling to find ways to get their kids actively engaged in meaningful service. So, those are key words.
That's what they perk up for. Awesome.
Another question: do you think it's bad that we use the term climate change believers, because it's not a belief, right? So
I try to avoid it if possible.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So if you want, you can tweet about that if you're viewing live, or via the live stream. And then we're going to skip a couple slides, I think. And this one. So this last piece of information is just about, comes from an interview I did with a local politician. I went up to him and said, okay, I feel that a lot of times I struggle to connect with politicians, especially I live in a area that doesn't, it's just a very strongly right-wing community. And so there's not a lot of conversations about climate change necessarily, but there is talk about conservation of land and things like that. So the values are there, but I can't kind of make the leap to climate change. And so I spoke with my politician and I said, if I want to push forward a policy through you, what are some things that you need to know from me? Because if I want to engage you, I want to make it easier for you. I want to kind of build that bridge towards you. And he gave me 4 questions that are kind of your homework assignment before you go and meet with a decision maker. And this isn't just for a politician. If you go to a business leader and ask them to contribute to an environmental campaign or to a policy, they're going to have the same sort of reaction. So the first thing they'll want to know is, especially for a politician, is what is the opposition, or who is the opposition? Who doesn't want this? Because if no one doesn't want it, then why haven't we already done it, will be the next question. But there's usually someone who doesn't want it, and they'll want to know why that person doesn't want this thing to go through. Second, who's in favor of this? Who's supporting them? In a political sense, this is to try and gauge who in favor of this sort of policy, or what has been who has historically supported this sort of action. Third is, what's the benefit to me? Everyone wants to know, what will I gain from participating in this? And for a decision maker, they'll want to know what their district will gain, what their business will gain, or what their community will gain from taking on this action. And then finally, what are the consequences? So just like in the nature video, they showed the benefits, and then they said, they kind of went into the consequences of what will happen if you don't act. You'll be stressed, you'll be moving too fast and not really engaging with the environment around you. And so these are 4 questions that I found really helpful so that I can engage better with policymakers. And then again, we have the climate sign. This is a symbol that can be used to communicate about climate action. So as I have right here, we got the peace sign, which also has a hand sign and a symbol. And then Black Lives Matter has the race fist. And then the human rights movement has an equal sign, and the LGBT movement has a rainbow flag. And these are all symbols and icons that we automatically connect with, or if you've seen them before, you start to automatically connect them with that movement. And so we want to do the same thing with the climate sign. So this is the way that you all can get involved, and we have stickers if you want to share them. And then the last thing we have is a handout that has some of the principles that we talked about today, especially that values map. It's blown up so you can see all the values on it. If you're watching from Twitter, if you just respond that you want one of these, we can send you via email or Twitter or Facebook Messenger. All right? And then climate sign is on the Eiffel Tower. Lots of people shared the climate sign, and here's how you can contact us. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah, and Natalie, and Emmanuel. So we have 2 other sessions, Marian and Sumit. Sumit.
Yeah.
Marian is from Bonn, and Sumit is from?
Well, I'm from India, but I live in Poland right now.
Yeah.
In a few countries.
So now you have to figure out who can stay longer, who has more time.
Can I do
You.
Well, how long do you guys want to stay? So you can go for me, right?
Oh no.
Okay. Yeah.
How long does it take? How long does it take?
I have only like 5 pages.
Okay.
Ah, great. Then you're next. You're next.
Can you connect my?
Yeah.
Do you prefer to connect USB or? What do you prefer?
Can we use your? I can make the last one.
Or you prefer